What's going on, everybody? My name is Alex Wilson. I'm my co-host beside me, Anthony Orvado from Fireside Giants, an Empire Sports Media production. If you are a diehard Giants fan, you've come to the right place. Daily episodes, draft content, and so much more. Make sure to drop a like and a subscription below, as always, on YouTube. And don't forget to leave a comment. We love to engage with everybody, and the community loves to engage with you as well. Today's episode, taking a look at Daryl Williams from the Buffalo Bills, who was recently released on Monday. Free agency coming up in 2 days. A lot of stuff, a lot of movement going on already. Zadarius Smith from the Packers was cut. A couple guys already, Billy Turner from the Packers. There's so many players who are now hitting the open market. The question is, do the Giants have the money to spend? Now, Jordan Raanan of ESPN said that it seems like the Giants are telling everybody we're not spending this offseason. Now, every year there's good free agents, players make cuts, and, there's players. So it's easy to get excited. And, I'm definitely one that gets excited about guys that would fit the bill for the Giants prospectively. But at this point in time, the Giants may be better off just sitting still, building, low key building, just waiting it out this year, the salary space situation, not pushing any money down the line and really hitting that reset button. So that 2023 is an opportunity for us to spend on the right players that can contribute, get the scheme down and everything, and have guys that can come in that will, kind of blend in synonymously. The Giants have in the past brought in guys who did not fit our scheme. They did not build around them. Notably, Kenny Golladay stands out as a big one that was a swing and a miss up to this point, but maybe the Giants really attack his strengths now. But I do want to talk about the offensive line here because that is the most important thing for Daniel Jones to succeed in 2022. It seems they're going to roll with him. But Anthony, before we dive into Daryl Williams, what he would offer and what a contract might look like, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really good, and I think that you kind of mentioned it there with the Giants in terms of their roster building this offseason. I think they're going to be putting an emphasis on building through the draft, which is super important. They got to lay a good foundation. It was different. 2018, Dave Gettleman came in, and he spent a lot of money in free agency, obviously a huge contract to Nate Solder, a couple other big contracts on the offensive line and other places. None of them really panned out because free agency, it's pretty hard to hit on free agents because you're basically overpaying for average talent every single time. And that doesn't always work out unless you're able to find just a perfect deal at a perfect price for a perfect player, which is just 1 in a million. So building through the draft is the way to go for the Giants. They don't have a lot of cap space this year. They're projected to have a bunch of cap space next year. But I think right now their mission is to make some trades, clear up some salary cap space through some cuts and restructured contracts and just build through the draft because those draft picks also cost money. They're all fully guaranteed contracts for the most part, and they have 9 draft picks right now, and they might end up with more because they're planning on making even more trades. James Bradbury could get traded. That could be another 1 to 2 picks right there, which they're going to have to put on their salary. So it's very important for the Giants right now. Just build through the draft, lay a foundation for the future, and they can clear up some money for next year and then hopefully go in and get some complementary pieces in free agency to go on top of the foundation that they lay out this offseason. Very important. But of course, you got to get at least some talent through free agency. The worst thing you can do is just sit there and do nothing. You always have to do at least something, whether you're making a trade to get some value or if you're signing a low-key player that will be a starter this year. And Daryl Williams might be exactly that for the Giants, might be one of those low-key players that could start for a very cheap, inexpensive contract. And I think that he would be a perfect fit for the Giants, especially considering the connection that he has to general manager Joe Schoen.
Exactly. Now, what do I like about Daryl Williams? What makes him such an intriguing option, aside from the obvious connection with Joe Schoen and Brian Dable? Well, for starters, he's a good player. Daryl Williams is a good player. He's probably one of the best pass blocking options on the market right now. The past 2 seasons, he's been tremendous as a pass blocker. He has essential experience at both right tackle and right guard. He's had success at both spots, right? He's a good run blocker as well. So, don't discount him in that category either. Last season, he gave up 4 sacks, 9 QB hits, and 27 hurries over 1,172 snaps. He played right guard for 600 snaps and right tackle for 571. Now, back in 2020, 1,050 snaps at right tackle, 80 overall pass blocking grade, allowed just 3 sacks and 17 hurries and 21 total pressures. So you're looking at him as a player. He does have some, has a knack to pick up some penalties at times. But I will say this, he's a very good pass protector. And if you want Daniel Jones to succeed, the Giants need to build a competent pass blocking unit. Now, I also like the versatility he offers. Like I mentioned, he has experience at both right guard and right tackle. Why is that important? Because if the Giants are sitting there at 5 or 7 and say, hey, you know what? Let's go get Ikem Ekwonu at 5. Let's say at 5 overall, Ikem Ekwonu is there. There are people that say Ike Ekwonu will be a better guard in the NFL. Maybe the Giants say, you know what, Daryl Williams is already a good right tackle. Let's start him there. We'll put Ike Ekwonu at right guard as a rookie. Maybe we transfer him over to right tackle at some point in time after Williams' contract expires or something like that. Or maybe you just start him at right tackle right off the bat, and Daryl Williams is able to play right guard immediately. You know, like those are two options that are now presentable. They're on the table. The Giants can kind of mix and match, see where Ike Ekwonu is playing at the time in spring and in training camp, see what he's kind of taking to, what he's performing better at, and they can really move and mix. An offensive line with Andrew Thomas, Daryl Williams, and let's say Ike Ekwonu, or even Charles Cross for that matter, is exponentially better than what we had last season. You can get a cheap center off the market in free agency. Maybe you just bring back Matt Skura, who played left guard last year. He's actually traditionally a center. So maybe you have him play center. Who knows? Maybe they keep Billy Price, God forbid. And speaking of Billy Price, the Bengals just gave BJ Hill a 3-year, $30 million deal with $15 million guaranteed. We traded a guy who contributed heavily toward a Super Bowl campaign for Billy freaking Price. That is like stabbing someone in the heart. I feel like actually personally hurt. I feel like Dave Gettleman took a shot at my family. It's unbelievable that this guy got away with such murder over 4 seasons and ownership didn't do anything to stop him. Meanwhile, we're sitting here with no money, no capabilities to do anything, and there's great players on the market that we would love to have right now. And Joe Shane's like, we can't do crap. We have to sit here and wait for the Giants, basically wait for this team to clear a bunch of salary cap. They're talking about getting rid of Logan Ryan, and all they would be saving is $800K. Like, they would be eating 11.4 or something like that million against the cap this year in dead money. They literally would be cutting him just to get him off the roster. Keep in mind how absurd that is. They'd rather eat $11 million in dead money than keep Logan Ryan on the roster. How does that make sense? I have no freaking clue, but that just attests to you, man. The contracts this man was handing out left and right. Kenny Golladay for 4 years, averaging 17 million a season. I mean, Christian Kirk just got 21 million a couple minutes ago from the freaking Jaguars. Like, what are the Jaguars smoking over there in Florida, man? They're doing some other drug. If you've ever seen Blue Mountain State, they're on Jenkum down there, handing out $21 million to Christian Kirk. That's absolutely out of this world. Anthony, what do you think about that for the most part? I mean, the guy's never had a 1,000-yard season. 21 million, that's Devontae Adams money.
Yeah, I really like Christian Kirk. I think he's a phenomenal talent, but obviously that's a lot of money for a wide receiver that's never put up 1,000 yards in a season. It's kind of bizarre, but that's the name of the game. That's what free agency really is. You overpay to get at least average talent, and that's kind of what you're seeing the Jaguars do. It's similar to what we saw the Giants do in 2016, 18. Whenever these teams go on these big spending sprees, it might be short-term game, but long-term, that's where you get into trouble because these are the contracts that are going to be really difficult to get out of. Christian Kirk over in Jacksonville, that's not going to be easy for the Jaguars to just move on one day, right? That's a big contract, and they're going to have to work really hard with the salary cap space to keep him around or even to move on from him one day. It's overpaying for talent, but it's at a position of need. Trevor Lawrence needs some wide receiver that he can depend on. Like, that's the number one thing for him. He needed an offensive lineman. They got Brandon Scherf, and he needs wide receivers. So they did the right thing there. They got some talent, but at what cost? Because long term, this might really come back to haunt them. But at the end of the day, if it makes Trevor Lawrence a better quarterback, I think that's what the Jacksonville Jaguars are thinking. If it's going to make Trevor Lawrence a better quarterback, at least in the short term right now, so he can develop into a long-term stud, that's probably why they went ahead and spent all that money on Christian Kirk. And from what I understand, there were a few teams in that race. There was a little bit of a bidding war. I think the Bears were also interested. So that's kind of the name of the game. That's free agency. We've seen the Giants make that mistake before. Right now, they don't even have the money to make that mistake. I think we saw them maybe make that mistake as recently as last season, with Kenny Golladay. I like the Kenny Golladay signing. I still think that he can be a good receiver. I think he was just trapped in a terrible offense last year, and I'm holding out hope that he's able to turn it around this year with Brian Dable. But I know a lot of Giants fans don't feel that way. They feel like, how can we make fun of the Jacksonville Jaguars when we just did the same thing with Kenny Golladay? I think it's different because Kenny Golladay led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in 2019, but he also had 0 touchdowns this season. So that's how free agency is. You never know. It's a crapshoot, just like the draft, and that's why it's important to build through the draft because it's much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's all about the NFL draft. What kind of contract would Daryl Williams get realistically? I mean, he wasn't making much, right? The Bills cut him, saving about, I think, $3.6 million, and against the cap, he was going to make about $9.9, $10 million this upcoming season. So he's been a good player the last 2 years. Maybe you give him a 3-year deal with, I don't know, maybe a 3-year, let's say, what do you think? 3 years, $26 million, and maybe 13 million guaranteed, and they have an out after the second season. The problem is the Giants don't have any freaking money, man. They don't have any freaking money. So like you're gonna have to push some of that money into the future. And Joe Shane doesn't want to do that. He wants to go into next season with a clean slate and the option to say, we have 90 million or we have $80 million. Scratch that. Let's cut Leonard Williams. We actually have $100 million to spend. Let's build through the draft, build it the right way. It seems like they're going the route that they legitimately want to rebuild from the ground up. This is going to be like the Giants tried to win and rebuild at the same time during Gettleman's tenure. Like this is the opposite of that. Joe Shane, from what it seems like, is going hard reset. Back to like legitimately the fundamentals, the foundation of this team. They're not going to be signing free agents like left and right. They're going to be saving their money, investing appropriately at the right positions that they need to fill and the voids they need to correct. But they're not going to spend aimlessly and put themselves in bad situations down the line. 1-year deals for players that may roll over. I think that's really what the strategy may be. A lot of 1-year deals in the future, and if those guys pan out, then you extend them. The Bills do that a lot. They get guys 1-2 years, and they extend them if they fit the bill and they have a good, they produce well. Otherwise you just replace them in the draft. I know they got Spencer Brown last year in the 3rd round, who's going to replace Daryl Williams at right tackle, basically. So like if you get guys in the draft who are competent and can replace players, you go out and do that. And I think that the Giants right now are thinking, we got 9 draft picks. Let's trade away some guys. I'd bet a top dollar that James Bradbury's on his way out. He's going to be traded for draft capital. I'd say that's probably realistic to consider at this point. They're going to try and probably trade anybody that they feel is not going to fit their scheme and they can get some value out of, because like Joe Shane said, you want as many swings at the bat as you can get. And I think that ultimately that's the hard reset we're kind of staring in the face right now, Anthony. Personally, it's going to suck, this process, but it's worth it long term. It's going to suck in the short term, but I'd rather suck and do it and be boring right now so that we can be exciting and competent for the next decade, because I'd rather not spend aimlessly in free agency just to be pissed off and watch the shit Giants team for 17 weeks now. We got an extra week to freaking suck. So it's like, I'd rather us now just take the loss, know that we're developing, know we're making progress, instead of just stalling and just hitting the reset button in free agency because we can't draft properly. Do you think that's probably a realistic thing to consider right now? That's probably going to happen.
Yeah, like I said, building through the draft, you're kind of hitting on it there. Building through free agency is not easy. It's almost impossible. You're supposed to use free agency to get complementary pieces, right? And that's kind of what the Giants need to take advantage of. If anybody read the article yesterday, Dan Graziano from ESPN was talking about how the Giants are seriously considering trading Saquon Barkley, and that ties into this conversation because what they're hoping for is that a team is one offensive superstar away from being a Super Bowl contender, and they're going to give up a middle round pick for Saquon Barkley. That's what the Giants are hoping for. That's what Dan Graziano explained in that article, is that the Giants, they want to move on from Saquon Barkley if the price is right, if they can get that mid-round pick that they are desiring. But they know that the only way they're going to be able to find a team that wants to trade for Saquon Barkley's contract is if that team is just one player away potentially from being a Super Bowl contender. So they're hoping that maybe the Bills, the Cardinals, someone like that is just one piece away and is going to give up a pick for Saquon. And that's really what the Giants are going to have to do because, like I said, free agency, that's the time period where teams are adding complementary pieces. They think they're one position player away or one player of this caliber away from being that Super Bowl contender. And if that's how the Cardinals or the Buffalo Bills feel, and they feel like they just need to make that trade for Saquon to push them over the top, that's what the Giants need to take advantage of. And hopefully they can build through the draft now like the Cardinals and Bills did, so that one day they're in position to make some trades or some signings for complementary pieces to plug a couple holes and push them over the top. So right now, I think Joe Shane, he's been through this before. Look at the Bills. We're talking about the Bills as being that team that might just need to make that trade for Saquon and be that Super Bowl contender, right? The Bills were helped build by Joe Shane. So he understands this better than anyone. You build through the draft and you add your complementary pieces down the road.
Yep, I think that's kind of the strategy that we're looking at right now. And like I said, might suck in the short term, but long term we can be excited, we can be hopeful, positive. I'd rather win games during the season than be excited for the offseason at this point. Like I'm just so done with this right now. Hopefully, and this is all really predicated on the fact that the Giants knock the NFL draft out of the park. If they don't do well in the draft, you can forget about the strategy. They've got to do well in the draft. They've got to develop these players at the end of the day. So that's really the strategy here. So Daryl Williams is a realistic. Probably not. Could it happen? I would say anybody that's connected to Joe Shane and Brian Daboll at this point is possible. They just got in Robert Foster, I believe, a wide receiver formerly of the Bills. The Antonio Williams, running back from the Bills. They've been taking some guys from the Bills to help transition that culture over. Maybe the one guy they're willing to spend on is Daryl Williams. We will see how that works out, if it happens or not. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe. As always, my friends, hope you had a fantastic weekend this past weekend here. Enjoying some interesting weather in New York, as always. But as always, we really love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Make sure to engage, and we will catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.
TVSO.